It's chaos.
It's a different type of Sunday scary.
It's your newest obsession.
It's Dirty Driving, a Formula One podcast.
We're the Hornsby sisters. I'm Katie.
And I'm Megan.
Yeah. Hello, everyone.
Hey, everyone.
Welcome back to another episode of Dirty Driving, this time with both of us in the same location. So we're sitting next to each other recording if you're just listening to this, but we're together.
Yes, to talk about the U.S. Grand Prix. We literally just got out of the car. That's why we look like absolute shit if you're watching this. It's unhinged how awful we look after that 7-hour car ride, and really how awful we feel after that 7-hour car ride. But we are here to talk about all things the U.S. Grand Prix. I think our feelings now were worth it.
Yes, and Megan and I were talking the whole car ride about how hard it is on your body. Like don't get us wrong, like we were there from start of the day till end of the day. You know, we like to be at the circuit and being in the environment. And so we're like, our bodies hurt, our feet hurt, our eyeballs hurt, my neck hurts for some weird reason, but we're here, we're recording, all the things.
Yeah, my body feels like I have literally battled. And I feel like I did with the crowds at times.
At times, yeah.
Specifically yesterday on the track. I think that's where all of my exhaustion today comes from, is having to get your elbows out to make sure that no one gets in front of you. You get your picture. I mean, I sound like crap because I was screaming so much.
But yeah, we are going to talk a little bit about our experience at the Grand Prix. We're going to release a whole episode about how to prep for a Grand Prix. So if you're looking for more of a deep dive into that, hold on tight because we will be putting that out. But we're just going to give you guys a brief overview, and then we're going to jump into the race because it was a race.
Yes, I did just take my hat off and audibly guffaw at my sunburned head. But yes, we had an amazing time at COTA. This time we actually had seats, we had parking passes, and we drove to Austin. So that definitely was a much different experience than Montreal, where we flew, we took the metro, and we were GA. So it definitely a different experience. We're going to talk about it. But we talked to plenty of people at the race, outside of the race. We got to meet a lot of people. You know who you are if you're listening. But in all of those conversations, we talked about with people who sat GA, who shuttled there, who Ubered there, who flew into Austin, different hotels, the downtown Austin versus right outside downtown versus far from Austin versus Airbnb versus VRBO. I think we kind of got a sense. Maybe we talked to someone who ticked off every single box at that point.
Yeah, and we just wanted to say really quickly, thank you to everyone who introduced themselves to us. Thank you to everyone who was so kind to us, who made friends with us, all of the above. That's honestly probably my favorite part about going to a Grand Prix in person is not only are you surrounded by so many people who love Formula One, but everyone, for the most part, is very welcoming, very kind, very, hey, how are you? How's the day going? Things like that. And at the end of the day, we're all there, or most of us are all there because we know and we love Formula One.
Absolutely. So let's kick it off. First, do you want to talk about where we sat? I think that's the best thing to talk about first. So we were actually at turn 12, which if you're watching at home, it's the back long DRS straight. And we were literally sitting, like, I think the speed trap was right in front of us and the braking point was like right after us. It was 2 sections down. We talked to some people who are a little bit closer to the actual turn. It was awesome. It was awesome. To see cars go from that speed to 60 in a matter of 100 feet was literally incredible.
Not only that, but plenty of opportunities for overtaking, plenty of almost overtaking. So just the action that we had in that corner. And originally Megan and I I think our aim was to sit turn 15, if I remember correctly. And by the time our tickets came up, you know, we had put a deposit down. We had gotten our time to book the actual tickets. Turn 12 was really all that was left. And so we just went for it. And we were pleasantly surprised by how much action and excitement we got in that area. Plus, it was like conveniently located within the track, but within the circuit of, we had our bathrooms, we had our bar, we had
the chicken tenders.
We were close to Wonderland, which is one of the like shaded areas where you can sit. We ate plenty of cake for sure from the 10th anniversary birthday cake, or 10th birthday cake,
10th anniversary
birthday cake, whatever you want to call it.
It's a weird way of calling it. But yeah, no, it was a great spot. It was convenient to be able to get over to turn 20, which is where we got onto the track. It was just a very convenient place to essentially call home for the weekend, like as home base, where by the end of it, we had explored the entire track. I think the only turn we maybe didn't walk during the day was turn 10, but we walked it at night after Green Day. So it was like we saw the whole track.
And then with our hotel, we stayed in a hotel and we lucked out with that as well. Megan and I booked our hotel very late, so we highly suggest booking your hotels early. But we were close to the track, about a 25-minute drive with a little traffic. And like I said, we got there early as can be and had parking passes and stayed until as late as we could make it.
Before we were basically like, we have to walk now to the car, or we're going to pass out. We got plenty of rides to and from the car, though, so it wasn't just all walking. But it was good. It was good. I think our decision to drive in Austin was also a really good one because we had the car to be able to use parking passes. It was about a 7-hour car ride. Katie flew to New Orleans, and then we drove Wednesday night. It really wasn't a bad drive, and we got to go to Buc-cees.
If you don't know what Buc-cees is, it's a gas station, but it's not
like Walmart and a gas station fused together with all Buc-cees branded items. Like, what do you need? Buc-cees brand is on it.
And like, what was so shocking to me is like, yeah, we went to Buc-cees and we got so excited about it. But not only that, like we saw maybe, I would say anywhere from 3 to 5 Buc-cees shirts at the Grand Prix. And every time we saw it, we'd be like, it's a Buc-cees shirt. And we'd freak out. And
we had our Buc-cees koozies, which are a great purchase. Definitely something that you need for the track, even if you're just drinking water to keep it cool. But no, Buc-cees I feel like it was an integral part of our trip. We went to the second largest on accident.
And then we hit a different one on the way back. So we're really just experiencing all the Buc-cees.
So then, like I said, we drove on Wednesday night. So we had all of Thursday, which we could have gone to the track to be there for the track walks. But we decided to actually take the day and hang out in Austin because we wanted to go to the Haas like pop-up type situation at Joe's coffee shop. And we wanted to go to the Williams pop-up in town as well. So we feel like we got a decent amount of Austin in us. We had Mexican, we had barbecue, we saw some live music, we saw a lot of cowboy hats. Not as many as I thought I would see.
Yeah, well, and we did point out like halfway through the day, we're like, where is everybody? I feel like the town would be busier. And we're like, oh, it's Thursday and at noon or 1, like everyone's at work. And we are here for the Grand Prix. So
drinking margaritas.
Yeah. Definitely like we should be at work moment, but we're lucky enough to have the day off.
Exactly. So it was definitely highly recommend that. That's something that we wish we had done in Montreal, is had a day or two to explore. I think if we do COTA again, I would go maybe even earlier to have an extra night, because let me tell you, we could barely even function after we left the track. So we didn't really spend that much time out. We did go to a very interesting dinner. We'll have to go through that another time.
Call us and we'll tell you all about it.
Okay, so like we said, we spent the whole day at the track and we did actually have seats. So that definitely changed our experience. Some people who had seats, something that was really shocking is those that had seats, a lot of people didn't show up till like noon.
Yeah.
And we were like firmly in our seats watching the historic races. I don't know if that's because everyone was hungover or no one cared about the historic races. Yeah. Or they were pissed that the W Series wasn't on.
We might just be able to bounce back better than others. So
that could also be it. We do have a talent in our family.
So yeah, I think all in all, I really enjoyed Coda. I enjoyed having seats, but I would be totally okay sitting GA in the future at Coda. There's plenty of space compared to what we experienced in Montreal, and we saw those big, I'm going to call them air couches, where you like whoosh, whoosh, whoosh in the air, and you fill up this, I guess, like
it looks like a parachute.
Hammock or parachute material with air, and then you roll it up and it's a couch. Like tons of people had those. I thought that was genius. Better because like two people can fit in them, so you're not like carrying chairs. They roll up, so that's definitely something we're going to think about in the future. But yeah, I really enjoyed our overall experience, and 10 out of 10 would go back next year.
Oh, absolutely. The best part about Coda, and this is the only thing that I think Montreal is missing, is we saw a lot of strange fan sightings in terms of, I don't know if it was because it didn't rain at all, and so people felt like they could be in costume. We saw a lot of, not even costumes. Like I saw 2 or 3 people in shirts that were covered with Gunther Steiner's face. I saw someone in a Charles Leclerc face covered dress.
We saw the Horny for Horner shirt.
That one, I laughed way too hard, and he was a little bit embarrassed by how much I laughed. We saw, so I don't know if it's just the Austin people. We saw a group of people in kilts, one of which was wearing a giant foam Texas hat for the race, and multiple people had to ask him to take it off because it was in their sights. They were also Nicholas Latifi fans. Which
is questionable, but whatever.
We'll move on from whether we will not try to analyze that right there. No, it was a good time. It was a good time. Definitely recommend it. Katie, do you want to talk about, I'm going to let you talk about this. Do you want to talk about your Shaq experience?
Yes. At first, I can't believe I'm about to say this out loud, but at first I thought you were talking about like when you sleep at someone's house and you Shaq. And then I was like, oh wait, Shaq, DJ Diesel. So DJ Diesel was the closing performer at Coda. He came out, was on top of the podium. This is my 3rd time seeing him. And I think when people hear that DJ Diesel is Shaquille O'Neal, yes, the basketball player Shaquille O'Neal, they're like, oh, interesting. Like, I bet he's not that good. He's more than decent. I wouldn't say he's like, by any means, the best DJ I've ever listened to. Like, I've been to EDC multiple times. No, but he's good. He knows how to work the crowd, and I love him.
He showed up he literally had a car drive him like 150 feet with the trophy. It was the weirdest and most iconic thing.
It was iconic.
And then all the Red Bull mechanics put their hats on and got into the car. The car clearly couldn't go that fast. I still don't know why he needed it. He could have just walked the 150 feet faster. But then he took off his shirt and DJ'd in a black, cut off white beater.
Yeah,
type situation.
He's always either in a white or black wife beater. Like, that is his go-to DJ outfit. I will say, like, it did not compare. I will say this. It did not compare to when he brought out LeBron James at EDC, but
I'm just so mad that he didn't bring out like any of the drivers. Like, he could have brought out Max. I'd like Christian Horner more if he was in the DJ booth with Shaq.
Yeah, or
would Shaq let Christian Horner in the DJ booth? Probably not.
Probably not. Or like Lando, who's like working on becoming the next athlete to DJ.
Lando did have his first gig this weekend as well. He DJ'd the post party at the Red Bull party. We have no details on how he did there.
Yeah.
He DJ'd with somebody I don't remember the name of.
We'll have to.
I don't know. He DJ'd with somebody else. But yeah, it was a great time. If you get the chance, go see Shaq.
Amen. Okay, so with that, let's jump into our news of the week before we jump into the recap of the race.
There was a lot of news.
There's a lot of news, so bear with us. We'll hit it quick, but bear with us. We're going to look back a couple of weeks at Singapore, as Singapore is getting a new layout next year. So Marina Bay is set to undergo some changes between turns 16 and 19. These turns will become one lone 397.9 meter straight, reducing the total number of corners from 23 to 19. So once these changes are officially approved by the FIA, the circuit will actually be reduced from a little bit over 5 kilometers to a little bit under 5 kilometers. And the laps will most likely increase from 61 to 63 laps. So just changes on the horizon for Singapore and Marina Bay next year.
Okay, another big change is that the FIA announced procedural changes after the incident at the Japanese Grand Prix, which was 2 weeks ago now, a little over 2 weeks ago now. It's weird that so much time has passed. But the specific incident we're talking about is when Pierre Gasly drove past. Well, the crane was on track, and then we saw it most prominently in the onboard footage from Pierre Gasly. This all happened under those horrible conditions where vision, I can't tell you, like, I don't know vision metrics, but vision was like
None.
very limited, especially when you were going as fast as the drivers are, even in slowed down race conditions. So as a result of that, we have a couple of changes. The first one is that Niles Wittich will permanently take the role of race director for the final 4 races in 2022. This is including COTA, which was just last weekend. But this is a change because previously he'd been sharing the role with Eduardo Freitas. So he is not going to be the race director anymore, as he was in charge of the race in Suzuka when the incident occurred. The next thing is that the FIA is going to actually message the teams through the official messaging system to notify them that a recovery vehicle is on track, and then it'll be the team's responsibility to communicate that to the drivers. And then last but not least, there are more that we're skipping over. These are the highlights. The third one we're talking about and want to highlight is that the FIA clarified the wording in the regulation about race time limits and points distribution. They're actually going to review that at the next sporting regulations. But this is as a result of the fact that there was
a lot
of confusion after Suzuka about how many points would actually be awarded, and in this situation, whether or not Max was actually given the official title as winning the Drivers' Championship, because depending on what point system they would have used, it would have changed if it had gone to COTA or not. Kind of sad it didn't.
In other news, Haas signed a new title sponsor for 2023 in a multi-year deal. So the team has been looking for a new title sponsor ever since the beginning of the season, where we all remember what happened. Don't need to go into it, but this weekend they announced MoneyGram, a digital payment firm, and they will be their new title sponsor with team naming rights. So get ready for a Haas MoneyGram F1 team. And this deal will push the team closer to the budget cap and allow for more support in their goal of becoming a regular midfield team. So big shout out to MoneyGram for buying Austin, like all of Austin coffee at Joe's Coffee this weekend, because Megan and I really enjoyed it, and we appreciate you, MoneyGram.
Look, if you're in Austin, you need to go to Joe's Coffee Shop. Yes, I did take my hat off for this. And you need to get the iced turbo. It's what they're famous for.
And a taco.
The tacos were incredible.
Yeah, tacos were great.
I will say, Austin, you know how to do a damn taco.
Amen.
You know how to do a taco. Okay, the next big piece of news that dropped right before this weekend is the fact that ESPN's F1 streaming rights are going to continue through 2025. So F1 will continue to be broadcast in the United States on ESPN networks for the next 3 years. It will be a commercial-free presentation, which will show at least 16 races for the season.
All right, now we have to talk about something interesting. Disheartening, bittersweet. I don't know what the right word is for it, but we're talking about women in motorsport. And if you recall from last week, the W Series canceled the rest of the season due to a fundraising shortfall. So basically, one of their sponsors didn't come through, and they had to cancel the showing in COTA and then the 2 showings in Mexico as well. So when asked if F1 should have done more to support the W Series, good old Lewis Hamilton said 100% I do, particularly the W Series. We need to be doing more to help women in motorsport. And then he went on to say, with F1 and Liberty Media doing so well, it was not a lot for them to be able to help out in that space. So just wanted to bring that up. We've now heard a couple of drivers comment on the W Series getting canceled, and I think from what they have all said, it's pretty clear that this has been probably the biggest disappointing news of the year. So yeah, and other news and like weird comparison news, it's uncomfortable.
Strange timing news.
It was announced by everyone except confirmed by F1 that F1 itself is planning to introduce its own female-only championship as early as next year in 2023. So sources reveal it will not be a direct rival to the W Series, and it will be pitched to younger drivers of 16-ish or older. That will be a direct feeder series into F3 and F2. Nothing is confirmed, like I mentioned, but it is likely that F4 machinery will be used and the series will be run under the umbrella of the F2, F3 campaign. I think the biggest point that I read was that these will be younger drivers and they'll be in the F4 machinery versus the older drivers in the F2 machinery. But it's still very interesting to see that Formula One is here to announce maybe the Formula W series, or will be announcing that shortly, and they're doing nothing to help out the W series itself.
I truthfully don't know if that means that they're, for whatever reason, they're not allowed to help. This is where I'm not really sure if we'll ever get a full explanation of what happened. It might just be a function of they don't have, because they don't own the rights to W series. Are they allowed to get involved? Are they not allowed to get involved? That part of it, it remains to be seen. But because, so much of this has gone uncommented on, and there's really no, I guess, direct evidence to help us link all the pieces together, there are still a lot of questions circling this. And there are a lot of questions circling whether or not the W series is even going to continue into next year. Do I think it's a good idea that there's both? Yes. Do I feel like one will get crowded out? Yes. Just by a function of if their younger drivers are getting fed into the future Formula W series and going through the F3, F2, like will there be people for W series? Probably, but then the W series might have to do something else with in regards to like super license points to make it be like a landing place for drivers. But a lot of this is still to be seen, like I said. Okay, a little update on the cost cap, because we've been following that, shall we say, saga? I think at this point we can call it a saga. Couple of things happened last week. First off, Zach Brown had very, very harsh words of criticism, and then Christian Horner responded to them. I don't know how I feel about Christian Horner's comments, so we're going to move on from that until I disentangle all of my feelings about them. Didn't have much time to process that this weekend.
No, and was pretty shocked. We're talking about the quote about the kids on the playground getting bullied. If you haven't checked it out, go find that quote. It's not that hard. It's go look at the F1 Instagram.
Literally Google Christian Horner cost cap quote.
Yeah. Honestly, just again, disheartening that was even mentioned or brought up. It seems not the place. So yeah, definitely need to remove our emotions from that before we further comment on it.
Exactly. But in terms of the cost cap, the FAA has officially offered Red Bull terms of an accepted breach agreement. Basically, that after it came out that they had violated, that they had broken the $145 million spend limit, the FIA offered them like a list of agreements saying like, look, you accept that you have broken it, and in return, here's your penalty. The outline is focused, what we understand, around a financial fine and potentially 25% less wind tunnel time, which now that we know that they are the champions, they are going to have the least amount of wind tunnel time of any team, because the winner gets the least amount all the way down to Haas, which is not Haas. Haas is in 8th. Williams, which is in 10th. Oh, that was such a Freudian slip. A Formula One slip. Oh. I'm just so used to them being P10, I guess. But like I said, Williams would have the most time. Red Bull would have the least amount of time. So it would directly impact them. Some calculations said they'd have about 50% of the wind tunnel time, which would be a development hit for them if that would be to happen. But that is contingent upon the FIA and Red Bull actually agreeing on that. They haven't agreed on it. They've suspended talks due to like respecting the team and giving the team the appropriate amount of time to mourn. the loss of their co-founder and co-owner. So more to come on that. It seems like we're probably going to hear whether or not they've accepted it or they've come to an agreement on a penalty later this week.
And as Megan just hinted, the Red Bull co-founder and owner Dietrich Mateschitz passed away at the age of 78. So Red Bull confirmed the passing ahead of qualifying on Saturday. It was definitely a sad moment and a shift in the atmosphere surrounding the Red Bull team and the other previous Red Bull drivers. Lots of posting, honoring this man who has done a lot for the sport. So he founded Red Bull in the mid-1980s and turned the energy drink into the market leader that it is today, showcasing the brand through a range of extreme sports. Having been involved in F1 with Sauber in the 1990s and early 2000s, Dietrich then purchased the Jaguar squad before the 2005 season and gave them the rebranding of a lifetime to the Red Bull team. He then purchased the Minardi squad, giving birth to Toro Rosso in 2006. And he also signed design genius Adrian Newey and gave many top drivers, their promotion, including Sebastian Vettel, who, following qualies, immediately went to the Red Bull garage to share his condolences, as Dietrich was one of the men who allowed Vettel to have his success in Red Bull. So I thought that was a touching moment that we saw between an old teammate entering the garage and giving condolences, and it's definitely a shift in the atmosphere of Formula One and Red Bull, and part of history that has now shifted.
Yes, it was definitely clear that the win on Sunday was for him. In fact, Max said it would have been a race he would have loved. So, touching moments. So this weekend, like we've said time and time again, we raced at the Circuit of the Americas for a 56-lap race. The circuit was designed by Herman Tilke and opened in 2012, which is the year I graduated from high school. And every time we talk about this, it really stresses me out. It is the first ever F1 purpose-built track in the United States, and it was opened by 1978 F1 champion Mario Andretti. The first Grand Prix was held that same year, and it was the first U.S. Grand Prix held since Indy in 2007. The race was won by Lewis Hamilton, and it was his last win with McLaren before he actually moved to Mercedes, and his reign began as king. The track is composed of 20 corners. We were at 12, but invaded the track at 20, and it actually runs counterclockwise, which is fun to see. I like a counterclockwise track. I don't know why, but it's cool. It kind of hurts your mind, but it's cool. The turn one is an uphill. It's very wide, and it actually is named Big Red. And truthfully, being on track made me realize just how fucking tall that is.
Yeah, we walked up it. It's a steep monster.
Everyone get your cardiovascular health up before next year. Turns 3, 4, 5, and 6 look like Beckett's and Beckett's at Silverstone or the S curves at Suzuka. It is really S-y, and it's like downhill and uphill at the same, like it goes down and then up, and it's really crazy to watch the cars go through it. In fact, that is where I was most apparent of how fast they were going. I thought it was the Casino Streets in Montreal. Nope, it's the S curves in Austin. While turns 12, 13, 14, and 15 actually mimic Hockenheim Stadium section. And we had the joy of actually getting to watch cars go through that. The F1 cars were fun going through them because you saw a lot of overtakes, but really it was the Pirelli hot laps going through there that made me realize that I should never be a race car driver.
Yes, they were drifting through those corners like no other. It was a scene out of Fast and Furious Tokyo Drift for sure.
I thought one of them was going to hit the barrier because it didn't look like it was going well.
And then for the Grand Prix, the United States Grand Prix has been held on and off since 1908. It was previously known as the American Grand Prize. As of Sunday, the Grand Prix has been held 51 times at 10 different locations, but since 2012, it has been held every year at the Circuit of Americas in Austin, Texas, except for 2020 when it was canceled due to COVID. Ferrari is the most winning constructor of the U.S. Grand Prix with 10 wins, while Lewis Hamilton is the most successful driver at COTA with 6 total wins.
And with that, let's talk about the weekend. Okay, so weird weekend, not just because we were there, just weird because of the Pirelli tire test. So FP1 was completely dominated by lots of conversations about the rookies taking, or reserve drivers, because Antonio was involved, taking the reins, which I guess it was a little weird to me that it was this weekend because of the limited amount of time to actually get in runs due to the 90-minute session in the afternoon of Friday being taken over by the Pirelli. No, not Pirelli hot laps. That is, whatever. The Pirelli tire test. Jesus, it's tiring being awake right now. Okay, so Antonio Giovinazzi took the seat of Kevin Magnussen. He actually crashed early in FP1 and then sat out the rest of the session for damaging the clutch. I think this is the nail in the coffin. Ew, that's a weird way of saying it because we call him Italian Jesus. It's the nail in the coffin on his return to a Formula One seat, specifically Haas. Oh, I didn't like that cringy. I'm so sorry, everyone. I'm so sorry. Ugh.
We're exhausted, so just bear with us. That's all we'll say.
4 F1 rookies were in there driving for taking control of the cars. Wow. Logan Sargent was in for Williams. He took over for Nicholas Latifi. Alex Palau was in for McLaren. He took over from Daniel Ricciardo, who probably could have used the time in the car. Ugh. Robert Schwartzman was there for Ferrari for Charles Leclerc, and Theo Porchire was in for Alfa Romeo for Valtteri Bottas. The big conversation this weekend was Logan Sargent. Let's talk about it. He is the first driver since Alexander Rossi for Marussia in 2015 to participate in an F1 session. He's the first American driver, keyword American there, during a Grand Prix weekend. He ran the FP1 session for Nicholas Latifi. He ran 23 laps. He finished quite a bit off for Max Verstappen, but Yost told us on Thursday when we saw him to not worry about the lap times. All he cared about was that Sargent didn't crash the car. He didn't pay attention to what Giovinazzi was doing. He is a 21-year-old Williams Academy driver, and he's currently 3rd in the standings of Formula 2 Championship. Let's be honest. Let's cut to the chase here, everyone. He was announced this weekend that he was going to actually be taking the open position next to Alex Albon if he gets the requisite super license points. We'll see what happens. He's had a pretty good year. He has won 2 feature races in Austria and Britain. He has a total of 135 points. But it all comes down to what happens in Abu Dhabi. He must secure 5th place in that race to actually receive his super license. So it's kind of up to what happens. I mean, if he makes it happen, it's great. If he doesn't, we've got a lot of questions on who's going to fill that position, because we know that the FIA does not and is not going to make any sort of exemptions for drivers. We learned that after the whole incident with Colton Herta. So it comes down to Abu Dhabi, but we will see him a couple more times this year. He's going to run 2 more FP1 sessions this year in Mexico and Abu Dhabi. And then I'm pretty sure he's going to take over at the Abu Dhabi junior test after the season is done. So lots more of him, and we'll see what happens. Like I said, I think this might be really a good time for everyone to get invested in watching F2 and watch the race in Abu Dhabi to see what happens. Okay, so FP2, like I said earlier, was dominated by the Pirelli tire test for 2023. Each team was given a specific run plan from Pirelli. There were 26 laps max for each car. Everyone had to follow these rules. So once you were done, you were done. There wasn't if I get it done really quickly, I can go pump in a couple more laps and get ready for the race this weekend. No. So 26 laps per car. There were 2 runs of 5 laps, and those were considered performance evaluations, with the drivers asked to push really hard, as hard as they felt like they could, outside of their in and out laps, and they were given 20 kilograms of fuel to do that in. Then each driver also had 2 runs of 8 laps. These were longer stints with their tanks full to almost full, with 100 kilograms each. Drivers were actually given the compounds blind, so they didn't necessarily know what they were running. They figured it out. Come on, what the fuck? And they were not allowed to have any setup adjustments between the runs. So as much consistency as possible is basically what Pirelli wanted. it was so-and-so on that, considering there was an issue with DRS. Pirelli actually had to ask the FAA to turn it off, or ask the race director to turn it off, because it should have been turned off right at the beginning of the tire testing, but it wasn't. And so we're not exactly sure if the DRS being available and being used impacted the test at all. And really that is detrimental, considering we lost out on a test in Japan, and we're hoping that everything goes smooth in Mexico. In terms of what did we learn about these 2023 tires, I think the biggest thing everybody noticed and took away from it, that there were some pretty big slides, as the tires are only, and maybe this is because the drivers aren't used to it yet, but the tires were only heated to 50 degrees Celsius instead of 70 degrees Celsius, as this is part of the movement away from tire blankets, because we will not have those tire blankets in 2024. And even this year, we saw a reduction in temperatures from 160 respectively to 70. So, that's going to be definitely something interesting to watch as we start the 2023 season. But interesting, that session was kind of a mixed bag. Charles Leclerc went fastest, then it was Valtteri Bottas, then it was Daniel Ricciardo. They were all on the softest and fastest compounds, we think. It's blind. Then we had the FP3 on Saturday morning, and let's be honest, Verstappen went fastest, and pretty much that's when we knew it was going to be a Verstappen victory this weekend. But qualies had to come first. So qualies in Q1, Carlos Sainz went fastest. So this is when Ferrari fans had a little bit of hope. Us in our Ferrari shirts were like, oh, maybe. In that session, K-Mag, Daniel Ricciardo, Esteban Ocon, Mick Schumacher, and Nicholas Latifi went out. It is the fourth double Q1 elimination for Haas. It was heartbreaking, especially because of the whole title sponsorship promotion with MoneyGram and the fact that this took place in America. And there was a lot of people out there, and we look like a bunch of legend shirts. They didn't look particularly legendary on qualies or in qualies. Next, before I go on to Q2, we also need to note that this is the third time in 5 races that Daniel Ricciardo has been eliminated in Q3. And at this point, I'm really, really, really disappointed, but also I feel for him. It's clearly the car just doesn't have it. And I want to blame the car, but I think it's a little bit of like, Danny's done. The car is not great. It's impressive what Lando's able to do in it. I don't know if they're different cars. Hell, they fucking could be at this point. We know the propaganda machine against Danny Rick. Next up, we had Q2 though, and let me tell you, this was kind of wild at the end. I would have to say we were all kind of holding our breaths to see what would happen, because this is when track limits were brought up again. They reared their ugly head, and why we don't have an easy way of actually, making sure that this is taken care of, A, in a timely fashion, and B, consistently, I can't figure out for the life of me. Lenovo, you were there. Can you help out with that? I don't even know if they do that, but still. Okay, Q2, Charles Leclerc went fastest, but Alex Albon, Sebastian Vettel, Pierre Gasly, Guan Yu Zhao, and Yuki Tsunoda roll out. Albon missed the cutoff by literally 0.027 seconds. Heartbreaking. We were all hoping for him to start in the top 10 so that he would have blonde eyebrows, with a bet that we saw him make with Laura Winter. Zhao was actually in the top 10, but like I mentioned in track limits, he was one that got caught up in it and had to have his time deleted, which allowed for Lando Norris to get through. There's lots and lots and lots of conversation about track limits and what the FIA can do to make this not really go away, because there is like a purpose for track limits, but to make it equitable amongst all competitors. So I wouldn't be surprised if we hear about that in the coming weeks. Q3 came up quickly, though. It's wild how little time is between the sessions. When on TV, it feels like an eternity. But it's not even enough time to really like sit down and catch your breath from screaming. So Carlos Sainz put it on pole with Charles Leclerc just behind him. He was actually behind him by 0.065. This is actually Ferrari's first ever pole position at the Circuit of the Americas, and it was the third career pole position for Carlos Sainz. And let me tell you, the crowd went wild. I loved it. Hamilton started third. Well, would end up starting third because of Charles Leclerc's penalty, which would make this the best starting position he's had of the entire year. He's had this position before, but he tied it, I guess is the best way of saying it. And Lance Stroll, I don't know, when he showed up in a cowboy boots, jeans, a white shirt, and a cowboy hat, I guess he decided to like do something that day and had his third Q3 appearance of the year. So what a wild Saturday. It is still so funny to me that qualifying happens and we still are not sure about the starting grid because of all the penalties. So everyone's like, well, we think this is going to happen, but no one actually really knows what's going to happen.
And with those penalties, let's talk about them because there were plenty. So Sergio Perez and Guan Yu Zhao both received a 5-place grid penalty for taking their 5th internal combustion engines of the season. Alonso was demoted 5 places after fitting his 6th internal combustion engine. Leclerc received a 10-place grid penalty after Ferrari fitted his 6th of 3 internal combustion engines and his 6th of 3 allocated turbochargers. Yuki also had a 5-place grid penalty after a gearbox change, and then Ocon started from the pit lane after taking his 6th ice, 4th energy store, and 4th control electronics during Parc Fermé. A note. The FIA have implemented clarified rules on engine penalties beginning this weekend after the confusion in Italy, where 9 drivers took engine components outside of their respective allocations. So hopefully we should be getting some better, quicker, smarter, faster.
Clearly it's not working because literally as we were leaving the circuit, people were confused on what was happening. Yeah. Maybe that's because there was a lack of information like at the track and you don't have cell phone service, but maybe they should like post it somewhere. Let's make it readily available on the TV broadcast of quality.
Yes. Again, I don't understand how we can't get a graphic going for what the penalties are, but that's fine. We'll write them a letter.
This podcast is brought to you by Racing Thread, Formula One clothing for any occasion.
Their clothing features subtle, evocative, embroidered designs for your favorite F1 moments.
From Ricardo's Monza shoey to Sebastian's Australian scooter ride.
From Lewis's Brazilian comeback to Carlando's round of golf.
Whether you're out to dinner with friends, watching the race at home, or cheering in the grandstands,
gone are the embarrassing sponsor logos. Instead, Racing Thread is F1 clothing you are comfortable wearing anywhere.
Right now, Dirty Driving listeners can get 15% off Racing Thread's entire range of t-shirts, sweatshirts, and polos using the code Dirty Driving.
That's Dirty Driving, all capitals, no spaces, for 15% off their entire clothing range.
Head over to racingthread.com to shop F1 racewear for anywhere.
So with that, let's get into the race because it was an exciting one. Sainz led away, but Verstappen got a better start when it was lights out and away we went. And Verstappen actually led into the first corner. With Max starting second and leading into the first turn, he is the 4th driver in 6 races here to start second and lead the first lap. Russell was side by side with Hamilton, and Hamilton ran wide around George Russell, nudging Sainz, who then spun and dropped to the back of the field. Into lap 2, Verstappen led Hamilton and Stroll with Russell in 4th. Vettel was up to 5th from P20 and Norris was in 6th. The stewards note the incident that happened between Georgie and Carlos and handed out a 5-second penalty to George as Carlos pulled into the pit lane to unfortunately retire from the race. Our first DNF. Thanks to the damage that his radiator punctured and caused a water leak somewhere in the vehicle. I'm not sure exactly where, but that's what the information I was given. Laps later, Russell was able to get around Stroll for 3rd while Latifi spun thanks to a big old gust of wind. He dropped down the grid to last. Not surprised there. Perez also got around Stroll while losing his front wing end plate, he received that damage on lap 1. By lap 12, Charles made up another place around Vettel, and Lewis led the rest of the grid into the pits when he pitted for hards. So the order stood as Verstappen, Leclerc, Hamilton, Vettel, Perez, and Russell. On lap 18, Gasly was able to pick off Magnussen for P11 as the yellow flags came out because Valtteri had stopped between turns 19 and 20 right in front of the Alfa Romeo tent, and he beached himself in the gravel after a spin. So the safety car goes out. Verstappen is leading. It goes Hamilton, Perez, Leclerc, Russell. Vettel was in 6th with Stroll in 7th, followed by Gasly, Alonso, and Norris. Just a lap after the safety car clears the track, the yellow flags are flying again because Alonso was closing in on Stroll. And as he jinked to the left to try and make a move, Stroll did too, but made the move too late, causing Alonso to hit the back of the Aston Martin, launching his front 2 tires in the air. All of that happened in the exit of turn 11 down the straight to turn 12, so we were able to see the Aston Martin get removed from the track, which I would say was a pretty cool thing to be able to watch. Wouldn't you agree?
It was interesting. I think seeing it in person makes it clear why it takes as many laps. So now when you're at home and watching it and you're like, why haven't they cleared it? Why haven't they cleared it? Like, let's let the cars go. Let the cars go. It just takes a lot longer to orchestrate it. I will say that for how bad the incident was, I felt like it was cleaned up very quickly.
Yes, very quickly. So Stroll DNFs and Alonso made it back to the pits where he was able to recoup and get back on track. Max restarted the race for 30 more laps of racing. Leclerc made an attempt around Checo but ran wide, and the very next lap, we saw it, we were able to witness it. He made the move going into turn 12, taking 3rd. Gasly received a 5-second time penalty for a safety car infringement. He did not keep within 10 lengths of the safety car. So one of many penalties that Pierre Gasly unfortunately received during the race. Lewis then headed back to the pits as Max failed or failed. He failed. This was a failing moment for Red Bull. It was an 11.1 second pit stop thanks to the front left rear gun not quite working. Lewis Hamilton took 4th ahead of both Leclerc and Max, while Perez led Russell and Vettel. Perez and Russell pitted laps later, meaning that Vettel actually led the race. It was quite a great moment.
People went wild. Literally wild.
By lap 39, Max and Charles were battling for 3rd. Charles remained ahead, but not for long. Verstappen took him into turn 1, all while Georgie and Checo battled for 5th. Checo ended up winning out. 2 laps later, Lewis dived down the inside of turn 1 to take the lead from Vettel. So at that point, our boy Lewis Hamilton was leading the race.
I would also like to point out that the crowd again went wild.
Vettel lost out on his podium position thanks to a 16.8 second pit stop due to, again, the front left tire. This time, the tire refused to come off pretty easily, so he sat there for a minute.
At least it wasn't a Bottas situation. They got the tire off.
They got the tire off. He came back onto the grid in 13th. At that point, Latifi also got a 5-second penalty for pushing Schumacher off track. With 7 laps to go, Max is within 1 second of Lewis. Verstappen takes the lead into turn 12, and the two battle the whole stadium section, but Max won out and retook the lead of the race. So the race comes to an end with Max Verstappen crossing the line, winning the race and the Constructors' Championship for the team, and this one was won for the record books. The last time Red Bull won the Constructors was in 2013, which ends the streak for Mercedes. It's also the team's 8th consecutive victory, and if they win in Mexico, they will tie teams for a record of 9 consecutive wins from 2013. This is Max's 13th win of the season, which ties Schumacher's record in 2004 and Vettel's from 2013. And having won from the first row, all 10 of the Austin GPs have in fact been won from the first row. Hamilton took another podium for the season, taking second, while Charles Leclerc took another podium for himself in third. This is 5 podiums in a row for the driver, which is his longest streak in his F1 career. So, little claps to Charles.
Shout out, Charles. Shout out. Shout out. You looked great this weekend. Loved the glasses.
Loved the red pants. Big fan. So, following the race, there was some drama. As always, I feel like there's always some drama that comes out of a dramatic race.
And look, we're not talking about drama on track. Like when the people got on to the invasion part, okay, there was a little drama there. But we're talking like we had like left the track.
Yeah.
This wasn't immediate drama.
No,
this was like we're at home tucked in drama.
I like to think this was DD. It was delayed drama. So we had the investigation of the Stroll-Alonso incident. The car 18 moved in a manner which caused a collision with car 14 between turns 11 and turns 12. It was a late move to defend Alonso, like I mentioned earlier. The decision means that Lance Stroll himself gets dropped 3 grid positions and takes 2 penalty points. So now he has a total of 5.
Don't forget that the reason we give you the totals of the penalty points is that if a driver earns 12 in a year, they're punished.
Haas then went on to protest against Red Bull car 11, Perez, and Alpine car 14, Alonso, for technical infringements. This is believed to be due to damage from collisions, and neither of them were warned with black and orange flags. Haas was pretty angry about this because K-Mag has been shown that black and orange flag 3 times this year, and it requires them to immediately pit for repairs so that they continue safely. This resulted in Alonso being dropped out of the points due to a 30-second penalty for being on track in unsafe conditions, thanks to his rear view mirror flopping around. And if you haven't seen the video of it flopping and then flying off, highly suggest you find that clip.
I also like the term. I also like that we've decided that flopping is a legitimate way of describing it.
So just, yeah, it's a good description.
It was like waggling out there. And
Yeah.
it's
The penalty dropped him from P7 to P15, promoting Magnussen, Vettel, and Tsunoda up. Ocon jumped into the points with 2 penalties handed to Gasly. He also served, in addition to that 5-second penalty for not staying within the safety car, he served a 10-second penalty for failing to serve the initial penalty properly, dropping him to P13. The protest by Haas was admitted 24 minutes past the deadline, so Alpine claims that it should be dismissed, but nothing will come of this. The decision has been made, and Alonso sadly sits down in P15.
no, Alpine's counter protesting.
Oh, so we're waiting on the results then. But
Yes, we're not going to hear anything until after Thursday night. On Thursday night, they're meeting in Mexico to decide if the Alpine protest is allowed to protest the Haas protest, which has already been decided. So we're waiting to figure out if the Alpine protest is going to even be allowed to be a protest. That is as confusing as it is.
yes. And what I meant by nothing will come of this is I believe nothing will come of this, and they won't change. But I guess we'll wait and see on Thursday.
I don't know. I feel like Alpine, okay, look, I think the whole 24 minutes thing is ridiculous, but the FIA is really inconsistent, so I could see them being like, well, you have a point. And then the next thing you're going to do is Gunther going to be protesting.
Gunther's going to protest the protest of the protest.
Welcome to the FIA. Isn't this a great sport? Everyone should be Formula One fans.
Woo! Okay, last couple of notes. Nicholas Latifi has received 2 penalty points for causing a collision, and when he forced Schumacher wide at turn 12, and George Russell received 2 penalty points for causing the collision with Carlos Sainz into turn 1 on lap 1. George Russell did head to the Ferrari Hospitality Center and apologize to Sainz after the race, so hopefully moving forward, those two are still on good terms. I'm sure they are. Mistakes happen.
So I'm glad we decided to set our grids before we got to the track. I'm holding firm in P4. Katie did set her lineup this week, and she is holding firm as well. Way behind me. Don't worry. The tattoo appointments are booked.
They are booked.
Stay tuned
Stay
for what you're going to see.
All right. That brings us to our winners and our losers.
Let's talk through them. I am going to begin with my winner. I have gone with K-Mag. Had to. It's Haas. It's America. He's not American, but Haas is the American team that we have right now until something else happens, which we'll see. Nonetheless, K-Mag, look, I'm pretty proud of this. He made a one-stop work. He ended the 7-race streak where Haas was not scoring points. Pause. Everyone should be clapping at that. We should all be clapping about that. And this ensured that they remained ahead of AlphaTauri. Yes, only by 2 points, but they are still ahead of them in P8 in the constructors. Genuinely, I think it was really important for the team to score points this weekend, as it was right after they had announced that title sponsor. Again, shout out to Money Room for the coffee.
My winner is Megan. Didn't love my winner when I told her who my winner was.
Wait, I just didn't get it at first, and then I realized why you were doing it.
So if you don't get it, here's the explanation. It's Sebastian Vettel. I chose him because he led the race. He did. Part of the race was led by Sebastian Vettel, which was actually his 3,500th leading lap of his F1 career. 3,500th leading lap of his Megan's. I'm not good at reading numbers.
Really hard. We're tired.
I'm not good at reading numbers. He was on course for P6, but then the slow stop knocked him down out of the points, but he recovered, passing K-Mag on the final lap to take P8, which luckily got promoted to P7 due to the Alonso penalty. And Vettel said, I will miss these moments after the race. So we're going to miss him so much. Like every race, it just like sinks in a little bit more that he's not going to be with us next year. And hopefully he comes back in some capacity. I'd love to see him be an advisor for a team or something.
Could he be the Ferrari strategist? Then maybe we wouldn't have to have a plan E. A plan E or F or G or H or Z.
Or double A.
I don't understand. They need a new strategist. But nonetheless, I hope it's Seb that returns for that. I don't think it will be. He's got bigger and brighter things to do. But I'm going to miss him. I'm very thankful that we got to see him race one more time in person. See him in person walk through the pit lane. It was nice. His hair looks wonderful after a race, even all sweaty and gross. Just kidding. He needs to cut it, but I'm kind of into it. I don't know. I have a lot of feelings about it. My loser, unfortunately, is Fernando Alonso. I really felt like I couldn't go anywhere else but choose him. First, he had the incident with his future teammate and son of his future team owner, Lance Stroll. Not a great way to start it, even though it was ultimately ruled Lance's fault. It still was a pretty wicked crash. I don't think I've ever had like my stomach drop as low as it did when you look over and you see Alonso's car halfway in the air. He even said after the race that the only thing he thought about the entire race was the collision. And so for him to be that shaken by it, a man who has been in the sport for so long and seen so many crashes, both had crashes that were probably less intense and crashes that were more intense and seen crashes that were more intense, it is pretty startling. It was a miracle that he was able to get the car to the end. I'll say it. I am shocked that there wasn't more damage to his car, considering how hard it hit the tarmac after it was in the air. But he continued and then was given like Katie had mentioned, that post-race penalty that dropped him from P7 to P15. It seems really shitty, the whole situation. I understand why Haas is doing it. They're not doing it to penalize Alpine. They're doing it to make a point that they have been overly waved flags, or they're basically protesting the consistency of the FIA, but it is pretty shitty, the whole situation, specifically after the FIA technical technical delegate said at the end of the race that the car was legal. So for the FIA technical delegate to be like, yep, cool, good to go, moving on, and then to get this penalty is shitty, and to get that large of a penalty is pretty shitty. So overall, I'm going to say it was a pretty awful day for Alonso.
And my loser was Carlos Sainz. We all know at this point he suffered the turn 1 of lap 1 incident, which forced retirement, and has now only managed 1 lap in the last 2 races. So this was his 6th DNF of the season, and he sits 5th in the Drivers' Championship, just 4 points ahead of Lewis. So we will see where he lands by the end of the year, and fingers crossed, no more DNFs for him.
This is actually the second time he's gone race to race with only 1 lap. The last time was Australia and Imola. So that is not a stat you want. It also blows my mind that he's only 4 points ahead of Lewis, and the Ferrari is much faster. Again, I'm going to say it. The Mercedes just straight up sweeping the points. They're just like a trash truck on a Monday morning after a busy weekend on a street full of bars, picking up any last crumbs they can get, which is clearly working out for the team. Not great, but working out nonetheless. It's the reliability factor.
Our honorable mention this week is the good old Lando Norris. He had quite a race. He had plenty of overtakes. At one point he fell down, or at the beginning of the race he fell down in the grid and then made his way back up to P6. So we just thought he did wonders, deserves the honorable mention, and he's the one for the week.
It was also really fun to watch his overtakes. Like where his attempted overtakes and then finally getting a driver down the back straight into turn 12. He is the master, not the master of late braking, but let me tell you, he can read when the driver in front of him is braking just a little bit ahead of him and he brakes just a little bit after them. So it's really cool to watch. And if you ever get a chance to watch it in person, like watch his braking because he's pretty damn good at it. And clearly he is, considering he was P13 and returned back up to P6.
Our hidden gem of the week is highlighting COTA's new environmental initiative that they got the help of Sebastian Vettel. So in honor of the total number of F1 races Vettel will reach or had reached this weekend at the USGP, 296, they're planting that many trees throughout the community. The first 20 will be at COTA, and the remaining trees will be planted in a park for a nearby drive. It's a close park to help with flood plan restoration. I also wanted to point out 2 other moments of the week. Megan, I'll let you announce one of them. I told you one of them. So
the hottest moment is Lance Stroll's cowboy outfit. If you haven't seen it, go look at it. Tell me what he decided to eat that day and became a totally different man with like a personality and sex appeal, because no one at the track knew what had happened. He walked out on the stage and everyone was like,
yeah, audible gasps.
Like audible freak out because they had never seen him look that attractive. Maybe he should just only ever wear a cowboy hat. He can be the Canadian cowboy.
And the nottest moment of the weekend, which, like, praise this man because he gives us all of our Apple devices, but Tim Cook waving the checkered flag was miserably lame at best. So he gets the nottest moment of the weekend, and
his enthusiasm was like at a 0.01%. It was when your Apple, like your iPhone, is holding on for dear life at 1%. Like, please charge me. And that was Tim Cook. Like, so we saw it in person too, and I was like, normally they like wave it like crazy, and he's like, can I be done now? Like, why? I also didn't understand why he was there. That's a whole different subject, considering there's like no Apple advertising, but whatever.
Up next is the Mexican Grand Prix at the Autodromo Hernan. Oh, no, sorry. Wow, wrong place. Up next is the Mexican Grand Prix at the Autodromo Hermanos Rodriguez. The 71-lap race takes place on this Sunday, October 30th, for round 20 of the season. The track, which was built in 1959, sits over 2 kilometers above sea level, making it the highest track of the season. And it follows the original outline of the 1959 circuit, kinda, except the circuit now winds through the old Foro Sol baseball stadium, which serves as the most sought out place to watch the race from. It's where we hope to watch the race from one day. Last year, we were given an incredible Max Verstappen victory and honestly an even better Checo podium. But both of them were overshadowed by the car being lifted up onto the podium itself. This year, we're hoping for a Checo home race victory. And really, we're doing that because we want to see the whole Perez family out celebrating. Like we know that they surely can. If you remember back to the moments last year, it was iconic to say the least. So join us next week for our race recap. Thank you so much for listening to another episode. Don't forget to subscribe and follow us at Dirty Driving Pod on Twitter and Instagram.
Until next time, stay dirty.